Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where we explore fascinating stories from the dairy industry. Today, I'll be sharing the extraordinary tale of Hanoverhill Designer Miss-a, a Holstein cow whose journey from sale day afterthought to breed-defining matriarch reminds us why we fell in love with this industry in the first place. You know, there's something magical about the unpredictability of dairy breeding. We often focus on record-breaking sales and celebrated pedigrees, but sometimes the most profound impact comes from the most unexpected sources. The story I'm about to share with you exemplifies why I remain passionate about this industry after all these years. It's a tale that spans decades, connects to rock and roll royalty, and ultimately reshapes Holstein breeding in ways nobody could have predicted. So settle in as we explore how a day-old calf that sold for just $2,100, the lowest price at an iconic dispersal sale, would go on to become one of the most influential maternal forces in Holstein history. Our story begins in the late 1970s with what seemed like an ordinary conversation. Jeffrey Nurse, the ambitious owner of Nurseland Farms in Georgetown, Ontario, was chatting with Phyllis McMaster, the agricultural representative for Halton County. They were discussing a concept that had the dairy community buzzing with excitement: index cattle. This seemingly casual conversation would set into motion a chain of events that would reshape Holstein breeding for decades to come. Following this discussion, Nurse decided to head south to South Carolina, specifically to visit Bill Hughes' farm in Apex. Now, Bill Hughes wasn't just any breeder. Those in the industry knew him as someone with an almost supernatural talent for spotting exceptional animals before others could see their potential. It was there, amid the warm Carolina atmosphere, that Nurse found himself captivated by a 3-month-old astronaut calf. There was something special about this young animal, something that went beyond what was visible to the casual observer. What made this discovery even more intriguing was the calf's pedigree, which included a storyline few would believe without verification. The calf's dam was Miss Dream Street Fond Helen, a Matt daughter with a fascinating backstory. Hughes and his neighbor Gordon Newton had acquired her at a Dream Street sale. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Helen had been bred by none other than John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Yes, that John Lennon, the Beatles legend himself. It seems almost unbelievable, but the iconic musician and his wife had a brief but noteworthy venture into cattle breeding. This surprising connection added an element of mystique to the calf's lineage, though Nurse's interest was firmly rooted in the animal's genetic potential rather than its celebrity connections. Seeing promise where others might not have looked twice, Nurse purchased the calf and brought her back to Canada. He named her Helen's daughter, astronaut keepsake Ray. Under his care at Nurseland Farms, Ray thrived, eventually earning her rightful place among the elite cows that would form the foundation of the legendary Hanover Hill breeding program. What's remarkable about this initial discovery is how easily it could have never happened. Had Nurse not had that conversation with McMaster, had he not made the journey south, had he not recognized potential in that particular calf, the entire trajectory of Holstein breeding might have been different. This chance discovery would eventually lead to one of the most influential maternal lines in dairy breeding history. Now, for the part of this story that still amazes me whenever I tell it, the rock star connection in Designer Miss-a's lineage. It's not every day you can trace a legendary dairy cow's ancestry back to a Beatles icon, but that's exactly what makes this tale so extraordinary. The connection runs through Miss Dream Street Fond Helen, who was indeed bred by John Lennon and Yoko Ono during their surprising venture into agriculture. Many don't realize that in the 1970s, the famous couple purchased a 600-acre estate in Delaware County, New York, where they established a small herd of Holstein cattle. This wasn't just a celebrity whim. They became seriously involved in breeding quality dairy stock. Helen's dam, Velnar Proud Harriet, had an impressive pedigree herself. She descended from Kirchendall Proud Clarion and could trace her lineage back to a Canadian Holstein named Moorline Reflection Bell. This was a pedigree that blended quality and reliability with, quite literally, rock and roll flair. What's fascinating is how this unusual background contributed to the genetic makeup of what would become an extraordinary cow family. When Jeffrey Nurse brought Helen's daughter, astronaut keepsake Ray, back to Canada, he was bringing more than just a quality heifer. He was introducing genetic material from a uniquely diverse source into what would become the Hanover Hill program. Ray flourished under Nurse's management. Her development confirmed his instinct about her potential, and she gradually established herself as one of those foundation females that every great herd needs. The qualities she displayed, strong production, excellent conformation, and genetic prepotency, would later become hallmarks of the Designer Miss lineage. When you think about the journey from John Lennon's farm to becoming part of one of the most influential Holstein breeding programs in history, it's a reminder of how interconnected our industry truly is. The genetic threads that create an exceptional animal often come from the most unexpected places. This unusual heritage added a certain mystique to Designer Miss's story, but as we'll see, her true value would be proven not by her famous connections, but by her remarkable genetic impact across generations. Sometimes, greatness comes from the most unexpected sources, even from a rock star's farm. The summer of 1985 stands as one of those watershed moments in Holstein history that anyone who lived through it will never forget. The Hanover Hill dispersal sale in Port Perry, Ontario wasn't just another cattle auction. It was the dairy event of the decade, drawing breeders and enthusiasts from across North America and beyond. If you were in the dairy industry at that time, you simply had to be there. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation as the greatest Holstein herd in the world was about to change hands. The sale catalog read like a who's who of elite genetics, with one name standing above all others: Brookview Tony Charity. Charity was the crown jewel, the superstar that everyone was talking about. When the bidding opened on her, you could feel the tension in the air. The numbers climbed higher and higher until she commanded an astounding $1,450,000, a world record at the time that left the crowd gasping. The headlines would celebrate this record-breaking sale for years to come. But while all eyes were on Charity and the other celebrated lots, something far less dramatic, but ultimately more significant, was unfolding elsewhere in the sale ring. Jeffrey Nurse had bred his Ray to Hanover Hill Triple Threat, resulting in a heifer named Monteith Miss Canada. When this heifer was 4 months old, Nurse had consigned her to the Allen Grove Triple Threat Invitational Sale, where Peter Heffering purchased her for $4,800, substantially below the sale average of $9,721. By the time the Hanover Hill dispersal arrived, Miss Canada had just freshened to Hanover Hill Designer, producing a heifer calf with a double cross of Roybrook Telstar. Enter Doug Dixon, a young 24-year-old breeder from Dixieland Farm in Cheltenham, Ontario. While the crowd's attention remained fixed on the record-breaking prices and celebrity cows, Dixon quietly purchased this day-old heifer calf for a mere $2,100. It was the lowest price paid for any animal in the entire sale, a footnote so insignificant that hardly anyone noticed at the time. 2 months later, when the registration papers arrived at Dixon's farm, he learned the official name of his bargain purchase: Hanoverhill Designer Miss. Not a name that turned heads, not a pedigree that made headlines, just another heifer calf that happened to be the cheapest lot in the most important Holstein dispersal of the era. Little did anyone suspect, not the sale organizers, not the other bidders, and perhaps not even Dixon himself, that this seemingly unremarkable transaction would eventually prove to be one of the most consequential purchases in modern Holstein history. The lowest-priced animal was about to write one of the industry's most remarkable success stories. You know, there's something almost poetic about Doug Dixon's purchase that summer day in 1985. While seasoned industry veterans and deep-pocketed investors battled over the marquee lots, this young breeder from Cheltenham was following his own instincts. At just 24 years old, Dixon didn't have the luxury of chasing the headline animals. Like many young breeders starting out, he was working with a limited budget and had to find value where others weren't looking. What he lacked in financial resources, he made up for with a keen eye and perhaps a bit of youthful optimism. Picture this young man, standing in the crowded sale pavilion, catalog in hand, studying the pedigrees, while the auctioneer's voice echoed throughout. When that day-old heifer calf came into the ring, the energy in the room had likely dissipated after the high-drama lots. Most buyers had either secured their targets or were saving their bidding for other featured animals. For Dixon, this was opportunity knocking. A daughter of Hanover Hill Designer, with a double cross of Roybrook Telstar in her pedigree, there was something there worth taking a chance on, especially at what would prove to be a bargain price. At $2,100, this calf represented not just the lowest price of the entire Hanover Hill dispersal, but perhaps the greatest return on investment in Holstein history. Sometimes the best decisions are made not in the spotlight, but in the quiet moments when nobody else is paying attention. Dixon loaded up his purchase and headed back to Dixon Farm, likely with no inkling of the dynasty he was bringing home in that trailer. This wasn't just another calf. This was the foundation female that would transform his breeding program and leave an indelible mark on the Holstein breed worldwide. What makes Dixon's story so remarkable is the contrast. While the sales headliners commanded figures that made national news, the true genetic goldmine changed hands with barely a notice. It's a powerful reminder that in breeding, as in life, value isn't always reflected in price tags, and sometimes the greatest potential lies in what others overlook. When designer Miss arrived at Dixon Farm, nobody could have predicted just how completely she would fulfill her genetic potential. In Holstein breeding circles, we talk about the concept of a complete cow, an animal that excels in every meaningful aspect of dairy production and conformation. Designer Miss wasn't just complete, she was exceptional. Let me paint a picture of this remarkable cow for you. Designer Miss achieved the coveted excellent classification, but what made her truly special was scoring 95 points across the board for rump, udder, feet, and legs. For those unfamiliar with the classification system, these scores represent near perfection in form and function, the kind of scores that most breeders only dream about. But Designer Miss wasn't just a pretty cow. Her production capabilities were equally impressive. Over the course of 8 lactations, a testament to her longevity and durability, she produced an astounding 176,367 pounds of milk, 7,755 pounds of fat, and 5,920 pounds of protein. These numbers weren't just good, they were exceptional, especially considering the era in which she was producing. What's remarkable about Designer Miss is how she balanced these two often competing aspects of dairy breeding. Historically, breeders have sometimes had to choose between focusing on type or production. Designer Miss defied this false dichotomy, embodying both in a single package. From 1985 until her death in 1997, Designer Miss called Dixon Farm home. During those 12 years, she didn't just produce milk, she produced the next generation of excellence. If her own accomplishments weren't enough, her true legacy began to take shape through her offspring. Think about this. In an industry where a cow producing even 1 or 2 excellent daughters is cause for celebration, Designer Miss produced 4 excellent and 8 very good daughters. This earned her 12-star brood cow points, a formal recognition of her genetic impact. What makes a cow truly valuable to the breed isn't just what she does in her lifetime, but what she leaves behind. Designer Miss didn't just pass on her exceptional traits, she amplified them. Her daughters and granddaughters didn't just maintain her quality. In many cases, they improved upon it, creating a cascade of genetic excellence that would eventually spread worldwide. At Dixon Farm, she wasn't just another cow in the barn. She became the cornerstone, the reference point, the foundation female against which all others would be measured. Doug Dixon's $2,100 investment had transformed into something priceless, a genetic anchor for his entire breeding program. The true measure of a great cow isn't just what she accomplishes in her lifetime, but the legacy she creates through her offspring. This is where Designer Miss truly shined, becoming what we in the industry call a dynasty founder, a cow whose genetic influence expands exponentially through generations. The numbers alone tell an impressive story. Designer Miss produced 4 excellent daughters and 8 very good daughters. For those not familiar with our classification system, these represent the highest tiers of confirmation excellence. Producing a single excellent daughter is an achievement for most cows. Producing 4 is remarkable. This exceptional genetic consistency earned her 12-star brood cow points, a formal recognition of her prepotency. Her ability to consistently pass her superior traits to her offspring. But her impact reached far beyond just her daughters. Her son by Aerostar, appropriately named Dixeland Design, became a sensation in the AI industry. He wasn't just popular locally, his fame stretched across the Atlantic. The German Holstein breeding community, known for their discerning eye and emphasis on balanced breeding, fell in love with the Design family line. I still remember how surreal it felt during the Royal Agricultural Winter Fair when literal busloads of German breeders would make the pilgrimage to Dixeland Farm. They came with a singular purpose: to inspect Design's family members up close, to see with their own eyes the source of the genetic excellence they had come to value so highly. These weren't casual visitors. These were serious breeders making significant investments in time and resources because they recognized something special in this bloodline. What made Designer Miss's offspring so appealing wasn't flashy marketing or hype. It was their consistent ability to deliver both in the show ring and in the milk parlor. Her progeny carried that same balance of form and function that made Designer Miss herself so valuable. With each breeding, with each calf born, Designer Miss's influence expanded. Her genes began appearing in pedigrees across continents, her impact multiplying with each generation. From a $20,100 afterthought at a dispersal sale, she had become the matriarch of a global genetic dynasty. When we talk about cow families that reshape breeding programs, the Mavis branch of Designer Miss's descendants stands as one of the most influential. One daughter in particular, Dixeland Prelude Mavis, would become the cornerstone of what many consider the most significant family line tracing back to Designer Miss. Prelude Mavis wasn't just another good daughter. She became the conduit through which Designer Miss's exceptional genetics would flow into future generations. When bred to Rudolph, she produced what would become one of the most remarkable cows in the family history, Dixeland Rudolph Mavis. Rudolph Mavis became a legend in her own right. She classified excellent 5 times, a remarkable achievement reflecting her exceptional conformation that stood the test of time. But what's even more impressive was her production. Throughout her lifetime, she produced a staggering 253,000 pounds of milk. Let that sink in for a moment. Over 250,000 pounds from a single cow. That's not just good production. That's extraordinary longevity, combined with exceptional performance. What truly sets Rudolph Mavis apart in Holstein history wasn't just her own accomplishments, but her unparalleled consistency as a brood cow. She produced 23 daughters in her lifetime. Now, in most cow families, when you get that many daughters, you typically see significant variation. Some excellent, some average, some disappointing. That's just the reality of genetic recombination. But Rudolph Mavis defied those expectations. Of her 23 daughters, not a single one classified below good plus. Think about the statistical improbability of that achievement. This wasn't just good luck. This was genetic prepotency in its purest form, the ability to consistently stamp her superior traits onto her offspring, regardless of the sire used. This generational excellence is what separates merely good cow families from truly great dynasties. Many cow families shine brightly for a generation or two before their influence diminishes. The Mavis family did the opposite. They maintained their excellence while expanding their impact with each successive generation. What made this even more remarkable was that this consistency held across different management systems, environments, and breeding programs. As these genetics spread to different farms and countries, they continued to express their superior traits, proving that the excellence wasn't environmental, but deeply embedded in their genetic makeup. The Mavis family line demonstrates why maternal lineages matter so profoundly in dairy breeding. While sires often get the spotlight in breeding programs, it's these exceptional maternal lines that provide the foundation upon which lasting genetic progress is built. What truly astounds me about the designer Miss lineage is its remarkable consistency across generations. In dairy breeding, we often see what geneticists call regression to the mean, where exceptional animals tend to produce offspring that, while still good, don't quite match their parents' excellence. It's why so many promising cow families flash brilliantly for a generation or two before fading into mediocrity. But designer Miss defied this pattern completely. From designer Miss herself scoring excellent 95 to prelude Mavis, then to Rudolph Mavis being classified excellent 5 times, and onward through subsequent generations, the quality didn't just maintain, it actually improved in many respects. This is exceedingly rare in Holstein breeding. When we examine the pedigrees closely, we see something that experienced breeders recognize as the hallmark of truly elite maternal lines: genetic prepotency. This is the ability of an animal to consistently pass on its desirable traits regardless of what it's mated to. While most cows' influence gets diluted with each generation, designer Miss's genetic contribution seemed to strengthen. Consider the progression through the generations. Designer Miss to prelude, Mavis to Rudolph Mavis, then branching into multiple exceptional family lines. Each generation maintained the exceptional mammary systems, dairy strength, and production capabilities that made this family so valuable. When you see daughters, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters all classifying excellent across different farms and management systems, you know you're witnessing something special. What's particularly impressive is how this family maintained its excellence across various sire lines. Whether bred to Prelude, Rudolph, Leduc, Allen, Damien, Duplex, Atwood, or Stanley Cup, vastly different bulls with different breeding patterns, the daughters consistently exhibited the superior traits of the maternal line. This demonstrates that designer Miss's influence wasn't just compatible with one particular sire line, but had the genetic strength to express itself regardless of the mating. In the complex world of dairy genetics, finding a maternal line with this level of consistency is like discovering a compass that always points north, a reliable foundation upon which you can build with confidence. The designer Miss family didn't just avoid deterioration, it established a new standard for generational excellence that continues to influence Holstein breeding worldwide. The show ring is where reputations are made and legacies are cemented in the Holstein world, and the Mavis family certainly left their mark in impressive fashion. What started with designer Miss blossomed into multiple generations of champions that dominated show rings across North America. Herbcrest Allen Melody exemplified everything the judges look for: that perfect blend of dairy strength, angularity, and mammary system excellence. She wasn't just another pretty cow. She combined show ring appeal with production capability, showcasing the family's dual-purpose performance that commercial dairymen and showmen alike could appreciate. Then there was Damien Marvell. What a sensation she created when she stepped into the ring. That tremendous frame, exceptional dairy character, and that picture-perfect udder that seemed suspended as if by invisible strings. She had that presence that makes everyone in the barn stop and look. Judges would run their hands along her perfect texture and placement, nodding appreciatively at what generations of careful breeding had created. Duplex Marvelous continued the tradition, carrying herself with that distinctive Mavis family style. When she produced Herbcrest Atwood Mariella, whose Stanley Cup daughter became the 6th generation excellent in this family branch, it confirmed what the most astute breeders already knew. This wasn't luck or coincidence. This was genetic prepotency working its magic. What truly fascinates me about the Mavis family's success is how they excelled across dramatically different sire lines. This isn't just unusual, it's the genetic equivalent of striking gold repeatedly. Think about it. Prelude, Rudolph, Leduc, Allen, Damien, Duplex, Atwood, Stanley Cup. These bulls represent significantly different breeding philosophies and genetic packages. Yet when crossed with the Mavis maternal line, they consistently produced superior animals. This phenomenon represents what Holstein breeders have sought for generations: a maternal line so powerful it can improve almost any mating. It's what the old-timers call nick ability, the capacity to blend well with diverse bloodlines while consistently stamping its own superior characteristics onto the offspring. For breeders trying to build consistent, high-performing herds, finding such a maternal line is like discovering the Philosopher's Stone, that legendary substance capable of turning base metals into gold. The Mavis family turned good genetics into great ones, ordinary pedigrees into extraordinary performers, generation after generation. This is the true holy grail of breeding, predictability and excellence combined, proving that Designer Miss-a's influence wasn't just powerful, it was transformative across time and bloodlines. If there's one cow that truly epitomizes the rags-to-riches story of the Designer Miss legacy, it's Charwill Attic Marcy. Her journey represents perhaps the most dramatic chapter in this extraordinary Holstein tale, showcasing how profound genetic value can remain hidden until the perfect moment. Marcy was born to Dixelin Leduc Mavis, already 3 generations removed from Designer Miss herself. When William Martin purchased her for just $2,500 at the Dixelin dispersal, few could have predicted her future impact. Think about that price for a moment. $2,500 for what would become one of the most celebrated show cows of her generation. That's less than what many commercial dairy producers might pay for a decent replacement heifer. What's particularly fascinating is that even as a yearling, Marcy's potential remained unrecognized by the broader industry. Martin tried to sell her, asking a modest $6,000, but found no takers. Nobody was willing to pay even that relatively small sum for what would later become a $500,000 cow. It makes you wonder how many other genetically exceptional animals are overlooked every day across auction rings and farm dispersals. Everything changed when Marcy was sold to Gencom Holsteins in Quebec. Under their expert development and management, her true genetic potential began to shine. This wasn't just another pretty cow. Marcy had that rare combination of dairy strength, angularity, mammary excellence, and undeniable presence that makes a champion. Her show ring dominance was nothing short of spectacular. She didn't just win, she dominated, claiming all Canadian and all American honors as both a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. When a cow collects such prestigious titles across both countries, the industry takes notice. Her value skyrocketed, reflecting not just her individual merit, but the recognition of the genetic gold mine she represented. In March 2015, Milk Source Genetics in Wisconsin recognized her exceptional value and made their move. The rumored $500,000 acquisition price. From $2,500 to $500,000, that's the kind of appreciation that makes lottery winners jealous. But Marcy wasn't finished writing her story. Later that same year, she achieved what many consider the pinnacle of show ring success. Grand Champion at the Royal Winter Fair. Standing center ring under the bright lights at the Royal, with cameras flashing and the industry's elite applauding, Marcy cemented her place in Holstein history. That moment represented the culmination of a genetic journey that began with a day-old calf that nobody wanted at the Hanover Hill dispersal back in 1985. What Marcy's story teaches us is profound. Designer Miss provided the genetic blueprint, but it took the expertise of operations like Gencom and Milk Source to fully realize that potential. It's a reminder that exceptional genetics sometimes need exceptional management to truly shine. The right environment, feed, health protocols, fitting techniques, and show preparation all played crucial roles in transforming Marcy from a genetic possibility into a show ring reality. To fully appreciate the significance of Designer Miss in Holstein history, we need to understand the powerhouse that was Hanover Hill Holsteins. This wasn't just any breeding operation. It was revolutionary. Established in Canada in 1973 by R. Peter Heffering and Kenneth Wesley Trevina, Hanover Hill represented nothing short of a complete paradigm shift in Holstein breeding philosophy. These weren't just successful breeders. They were visionaries who had already made their mark in the United States before crossing the border northward. What made Hanover Hill special was their comprehensive approach. While others might focus exclusively on production or type, Heffering and Trevina understood the value of balance. They methodically mated deep cow families with the absolute best sires available, creating a program that emphasized both exceptional milk production and outstanding physical conformation. By the mid-1980s, Hanover Hill had transformed into what many called the epicenter of the Holstein universe. This wasn't hyperbole, it was reality. They had developed what was widely considered the planet's most influential Holstein herd, period. Their breeding program had produced 9 Class Extra sires, more than any operation in Holstein history, breaking the record previously held by Mount Victoria Farms. Their marketing strategies were equally sophisticated. They understood that breeding exceptional cattle was only half the battle. Presenting them properly to the world was equally important. Hanover Hill sales became industry events, drawing breeders from across the globe who recognized that securing Hanover Hill genetics meant accessing the cutting edge of Holstein breeding. This is the context that makes Designer Miss-a's story even more remarkable. She emerged as one of the most significant maternal influences in the breed from within a program already famous for producing elite animals. Despite her humble beginnings and that $2,100 price tag, the lowest of the entire dispersal sale, she would go on to eclipse the influence of many of her more celebrated and expensive herdmates. What's truly extraordinary is that Designer Miss wasn't just another good cow from a great herd. In many ways, she became the embodiment of Hanover Hill's breeding philosophy: balanced, productive, structurally correct, and most importantly, prepotent. She didn't just carry the Hanover Hill prefix. She carried forward its vision in ways that even her breeders couldn't have fully anticipated when she was born. When I look at Designer Miss-a's remarkable journey, I can't help but think about the profound lessons her story offers for today's dairy breeders. In an era dominated by genomics, indexes, and data-driven decisions, her legacy reminds us of some timeless truths about breeding exceptional cattle. First and foremost, price tags rarely, if ever, tell the whole story. We live in an industry where headline-grabbing sales often capture our attention. The million-dollar heifers and embryo packages make for exciting conversation, but Designer Miss proves that extraordinary genetic potential can be hiding in plain sight. At just $2,100, the lowest price of the entire Hanover Hill dispersal, she was literally the bargain that everyone overlooked. This should give every breeder, regardless of budget, reason for optimism. The next breed-changing cow might already be in your barn, not commanding attention, but quietly building a foundation for greatness. Sometimes the animal that doesn't catch everyone's eye at first glance is the one with the deepest genetic capacity to influence generations. Designer Miss also teaches us about focusing on fundamental traits rather than chasing trends. While the industry was increasingly shifting toward index-based selection, her story highlights the enduring value of basic, functional conformation and production efficiency. She embodied what many call trouble-free genetics, the kind that work day in and day out in commercial environments while maintaining the capacity for show ring excellence. Her legacy reminds us to look beyond the current breeding fads. The traits that made Designer Miss exceptional, mammary system, feet and legs, production persistence, fertility, are the same traits that determine profitability and longevity today. The packaging might change, but the fundamentals rarely do. Perhaps most importantly, Designer Miss exemplifies the beautiful unpredictability of genetic expression. Breeding is both science and art, blending careful analysis with intuition and sometimes just plain luck. Even with all our technological advances, there remains an element of genetic recombination that we cannot fully predict or control. This unpredictability is what makes breeding so captivating. Designer Miss wasn't engineered through complex mating strategies or cutting-edge technology. She emerged from thoughtful but straightforward breeding decisions and then proceeded to defy all expectations. Her ability to pass on her exceptional qualities generation after generation, what we call prepotency, couldn't have been fully predicted by any index or evaluation system available at the time. For modern breeders dealing with genomic evaluations and AI mating programs, Designer Miss offers a humble reminder that our sophisticated tools are supplements to, not replacements for, breeder judgment and the time-tested principles of selection. The disciplined eye that can recognize quality, regardless of pedigree or price, remains invaluable. Her story also underscores patience as a breeder's virtue. Designer Miss's full impact wasn't immediately apparent. It unfolded gradually across generations as her daughters, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters continued to excel. In today's fast-paced breeding environment, where genomic evaluations can change monthly and cattle turnover is rapid, the value of giving a cow family time to prove itself shouldn't be underestimated. What truly makes a cow valuable in the dairy industry? As we've seen through the extraordinary story of Designer Miss, it's certainly not the price tag. True value emerges through a combination of factors that become evident only with time and careful observation. Designer Miss exemplified what I consider the 4 pillars of bovine value. First, there's consistency, the ability to not just be excellent herself, but to produce offspring that maintain or even improve upon that excellence. So many promising cows fall short when their genetics don't translate to the next generation. Designer Miss defied those odds, creating a dynasty where excellence became the family standard, not the exception. Second is production efficiency. A beautiful cow that can't produce economically viable amounts of milk might win ribbons, but she won't build sustainable operations. Designer Miss proved herself over 8 lactations, producing over 176,000 pounds of milk while maintaining her physical excellence. This balance is what commercial dairymen need to survive, and what seed stock producers must prioritize to remain relevant. Third comes conformation, the physical structure that allows longevity. Designer Miss scored excellent with remarkable 95-point scores for rump, udder, feet, and legs. These weren't just aesthetic qualities, they were functional attributes that enabled her productive life and transmitted to her offspring. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, is prepotency, that magical ability to stamp her qualities onto her offspring regardless of the sire. When her descendants consistently excelled across multiple generations and through various sire lines, it demonstrated her extraordinary genetic influence. This predictability is invaluable in a breeding program. For today's dairy producers facing thin margins and volatile markets, these lessons from Designer Miss aren't just interesting history, they're practical guidance. The most valuable animals in your herd might not be the ones with the highest genomic numbers or the flashiest pedigrees. They're the trouble-free cows that calve regularly, produce efficiently, maintain body condition, stay healthy, and reliably pass these traits to their offspring. In our pursuit of genetic advancement, we sometimes overlook these fundamentals. Yet Designer Miss reminds us that the definition of a truly valuable cow hasn't changed much over the decades. The methods of identification have evolved, but the core attributes remain constant. Her legacy encourages us to look beyond the surface, beyond the indexes, and recognize the deep, lasting value that builds sustainable herds and profitable operations. As we come to the end of this remarkable story, I can't help but reflect on the incredible irony at its heart. The 1985 Hanover Hill dispersal was historic by any measure, with all eyes fixed on Brookview Tony Charity as she commanded that staggering $1.45 million price tag. The cameras flashed, the crowd gasped, and the headlines wrote themselves. A world record, a sensation, a moment in Holstein history. Yet in the shadow of that spectacle, a day-old heifer calf changed hands for just $2,100, the lowest price paid for any animal that day. No fanfare, no headlines. Just a young breeder named Doug Dixon making what seemed like a modest purchase. That calf was Hanoverhill Designer Miss. History has a way of rewriting first impressions, doesn't it? While Tony Charity certainly earned her place in the record books, it was Designer Miss who quietly built one of the most influential maternal lines our breed has ever seen. She became the cow that launched thousands of exceptional daughters, granddaughters, and descendants. Animals that have shaped modern breeding programs across continents. I think there's a profound lesson here for all of us in the dairy business. We're naturally drawn to the spectacular, the record-breaking sales, the championship ribbons, the perfect scores. But sometimes, true greatness lies in the animal that nobody's watching. The heifer in the corner pen. The cow with the modest pedigree, but the remarkable consistency. Designer Miss reminds us that in breeding, as in life, the packaging doesn't always reveal what's inside. Her story encourages us to look deeper, to trust our instincts, and to remember that genetic expression sometimes takes generations to fully reveal itself. The next time you're at a sale, and your attention is pulled toward that unheralded animal that something in your gut tells you to bid on, remember, Designer Miss, When you're evaluating your herd and wondering which bloodlines to develop, remember how this seemingly ordinary calf built an extraordinary legacy. In our industry, where margins are tight and decisions matter, Designer Miss offers perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes the best investments aren't the ones with the highest price tags, but those with the deepest foundations, the ones that will still be paying dividends generations after the headlines have faded and the record prices have been forgotten. That's the legacy of Hanoverhill Designer Miss, the unexpected champion whose greatest triumph wasn't a single moment of glory, but a quiet revolution that continues to shape our breed today. Thanks for tuning in to our show today. We've enjoyed having you with us and hope you found the episode informative and entertaining. If you liked what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. Join us next time for another fascinating discussion. Until then, take care and be well.